Hi Harshad, good to be speaking with you. We were just speaking with our technical expert earlier and he's talking about 26,000 on the index as soon as next week. What about the top of the year? Because at 24,000 we thought that perhaps fundamentals are not running as fast as the valuations. 25,000, same questions being asked about valuations. But it just seems like it's all about liquidity, momentum and flows.
No, absolutely. Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. No, absolutely right. Fundamentals do assert themselves over medium to long term. But in the near term, clearly the liquidity or the demand supply tends to overwhelm fundamentals. However, I must point out that uh, medium to long term fundamentals of Indian economy, corporate sector look very, very robust. So to that extent, yes, sometimes the valuations will run ahead of themselves, stocks will and sectors will run ahead of themselves. But so long as the medium to long term trajectory, you are sure of, these things tend to happen. So I don't really worry too much about it. Having said that, we clearly believe that at this point of time, if you look at risk reward, large cap is where risk reward looks far better compared to mid caps and small caps.
Okay. In large cap, the risk reward looks much more interesting, but in the large cap also financials are one space where valuations are quite attractive. Yet you are underweight on financials. Why so?
See, firstly, I mean, one of the things that I learned in my career on the sell side and buy side is valuation itself is never a reason to buy, or for that matter, sell anything. The other factors, how they come together is very, very important. And in financials, particularly, I would say banks is where there could be a problem in terms of performance, operating performance. I think we are past there is best as far as banking is concerned, right? Credit cost will probably normalize. NIMs will probably are also past their best. So that is the problem. I agree that valuations look far attractive compared to history in many cases, but banking is where we are, sort of, I would say, more negative. NBFCs actually will get more interesting as the rate cut cycle begins.
So NBFC is a bit more positively placed, at least versus the banks. And very interesting, Harshad, how you are a bit contra in terms of your fund positioning, because as even Somit was pointing out, you're underweight financials, utility materials, the spaces where rest of the street is actually turning incrementally positive, and you're overweight IT, healthcare and telecom, which have been so-called the pain points, not as much as healthcare, but IT and telecom has had its seasons. Talking about the season for telecom, it doesn't look like it's a good one, at least this week, with the kind of announcement or verdict coming in from Supreme Court yesterday and the flashes that we were just reading, that most of the private players have actually lost subscribers in the month of July. It's only BSNL that has managed to add the subscriber. Is it telling you that taking more price hikes and that ARPU improvement story is not going to play out in a hurry?
I think it will play out over a period of time. Clearly, there can be immediate action. However, for the survival of the sector, particularly the weaker players, ARPU increase was a must, and it was taken after a very, very long period of time. So I have no doubt in my mind. See, subscriber growth. We saw a phase when the subscriber growth was the major driver. Going forward, clearly, pricing improvement is going to be the major driver. And I mean, you sort of alluded to the recent developments in the telecom sector. However, that will actually improve the, strengthen the hands of the stronger players in the industry, which is the reason why we believe that over medium term also we do see price hikes happening, after a gap of 12 to 18 months going forward.
Okay, when it comes to telecom sector, as you were mentioning price hike, I believe that other than price hike, there is there's not much trigger left in the sector going forward. But are you confident that the companies will be able to take price hike, say in a gap of every 12 months? Because in the past also we have seen that there have been inconsistencies in taking price hike by telecom companies.
I do believe that it will happen after. That's one of the reasons is that, as you know, the government also wants this to be a 3 or 4 player market. And for weaker players, particularly, I think price hike is the only way to ensure their survival. In any case, I think we are probably past the time when telecom industry was ultra competitive in terms of big fight for market share. Now I think where the market shares are, I think it's in the interest of everybody to take disciplined price hikes from time to time. So I do believe that will continue over the medium term.
Okay, so that's the view on telecom sector as a whole. But Harshad, it seems like that you're favoring a lot more of these, export-oriented kind of sectors, IT and healthcare, which are at least have a large exposure in terms of what happens across the globe, and not as much in terms of consumption or manufacturing, which are those big themes that has been talked about in the domestic economy. Could you explain that to us? And within IT and healthcare, what are you favoring?
In healthcare, clearly export-oriented players are, clearly we are overweight on them. That has played out really well if you look at stock price performance and also the earnings growth performance. On the IT side, clearly it's more of an export story. There was a period of several quarters when it was not sure how the IT demand will pick up. However, the recent signs, what the companies are saying, what their customers are saying, we believe that, over a period of next few quarters, we do see IT demand to pick up from US corporates, European corporates. And that's the reason why we are overweight. Consumption, your observation is right that, we are sort of underweight on consumption. It's not that we are ignoring it. We are very closely looking at consumption as a theme. However, remember that consumption as a theme doesn't have to be the traditional, FMCG stocks. There are different ways of playing consumption, and we are studying and evaluating that segment also.
Looking at niche ways to play consumption, but what about manufacturing? Do you think that the valuations are keeping you at bay, or you question the structural story as well?
No. Structural story, we are positive. In fact, if you had looked at our fact sheet, let's say 2-3 months ago, you would have seen that one of the biggest overweight sectors that we had was industrials, capital goods, and so on. It's just that we believe that the risk reward there looked unattractive compared to other sectors, which is the reason why we reduced the positioning. But we are completely sold out on the long-term structural story.
When it comes to PSUs, how are you looking at that space? The valuations have come off a bit from the peaks that we have seen, and the growth story or the structural growth story continues to remain strong given the fact that the order book for many of these power or defense PSUs continues to remain strong currently.
Yes. So again, long-term story remains strong in many of the sectors. Like, for example, if you take a segment like defense, if you take a segment like the whole power chain, fundamentals remain the same, order books remain the same, earnings growth is reasonable. But as you rightly alluded to, the valuations had run up a lot. And, from relative return investors' perspective, which is what the mutual funds are, we have to basically evaluate the relative risk reward in various sectors and stocks and accordingly adjust the portfolios. So we are not at all doubtful about the long-term structural story in many of these segments. It's just that when the risk reward becomes less attractive, we tend to cut down there.
Well, thank you, Harshad, for joining us and for giving us your view when it comes to market overall. With that, let's slip into a short break and we'll be back with more news on the other side.